So, um, Brad, you met in that last session, which was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Brad. Brad is the Assistant Head of Service at Leicestershire Education Hub. John Calcott is joining us, and John is the Music Technology Lead at NMPAT, which is the Northampton Music and Performing Arts Trust. Say hello, John.
Hello.
Ah. Jess Orestano. Jess is also at NMPAT, and she's a music technology peripatetic.
Hiya.
And Ross Kenning is the music lead for music technology and pupil achievement in the Ealing Music Service.
Hi there. Thanks, David.
Oh, wonderful. Look, people are coming back. John's there. We can see John. We can see Tim. And last but not least, Tim Bennett-Hart. Tim Bennett-Hart is the Director of Academic for RSO qualifications, which many people better know as Rockschool. And they are at the forefront of creating qualifications that we in time feel are very relevant for the 21st century and our future music industry. So it's great, Tim, to have you with us as well.
Everybody,
I think suddenly my light has come on. Isn't that wonderful? Well, Brad answered lots and lots of questions already there. I'm going to invite Richard as questions come up on the chat to just jump in with them.
Will do.
Richard, thank you. And we're all very painfully aware of the restrictions that COVID-19 has put on all of us. So, but I would like in this session more to look at the future and look at what the potential is for music technology. In time, music technology for us is not just boys making beats in bedrooms, as somebody said. It is its huge potential goes from the early years right up to the seniors. And also it embraces accessibility, and that is going to be one of the main things we're going to talk about in our third seminar. But I would like to ask the panel at the moment what barriers that they've experienced in trying to set up a music technology offering, and how did you get around them? Brad mentioned some of this. I'd like to hear from other people. John?
Well, for me, it was I had a load of money chucked at me and I had to decide what to do with it. And that was the biggest barrier because I had nothing to go on. And with tech stuff, it's easy to waste money. You can blow so much money on stuff you don't need. So I was lucky enough that I got in touch with Richard at Cubase and Steinberg, and he helped me big time. So that was the first barrier. And then the next barrier was trying to get people on board at my music hub because it's largely classical. Most of the people there are that way out. So I had to sort of do a bit of political manoeuvring just to sort of get people on board, and I did a few training days and things like that, and that helped. So yeah, that's the other barrier. It's finding like-minded people with the right skill set as well at your hub. So I was lucky, really, in my case, and obviously from doing all of that, then it's gone on to finding, like people like Brad at Leicestershire, who hopefully I'm going to hook up with soon, and then it should all start unfolding and making more sense. But a bit of trial and error in my case.
John, how did it work when you first went into the school and said, would you like to do some music technology? Was there a sort of an initial thing there?
Yeah, so I'm a guitar teacher primarily, but I did my degree in music tech donkeys ago. So I just had good relationships with all my schools, and I mainly sort of teach in secondary. So it would be like I'd record concerts or things like that will help them with school coursework, and so I just got in with the schools that way. So that was my way in.
And has there been a way you can sort of validate what you've been doing there as well, or is it just having fun making music technology?
It's a funny one. Music tech in a lot of the secondary schools, I mean, it's normally kids that have opted to do GCSE and can't play any instruments, and they would go, John, can you help us? And that was sort of a way in as well. So it was a way to validate using music tech. And now I think it's starting to creep into some of the syllabus, and of course with RSL and the music production grades, which are amazing. That's been a huge thing for me.
Can you tell us a bit more about those and how you use them?
Yeah, so at the moment we have a funded project, so we go into schools and we teach sort of classes of 6 for 1 hour at a time, a bit like a first access project. And over 10 weeks, my aim is to get them to grade 1. And then after that, hopefully some of the kids would have had a good time and then want to carry on. We take in our own laptops at the moment, and again, I think Bradley mentioned this, it's the removing the variables because I know a lot of schools do have a lot of stuff, but there might have been teachers that have come and gone over the years and have bought things and then they get put in cupboards and what have you. So we just take in 6 laptops. We run Cubase, which you helped us with, which is very kind. We also give the kids, just so that when we leave, they still have something they can do throughout the week. We give them access to Charanga VIP. I don't know if people know about that. It's a bit like Soundtrap. It's like an online studio thing, but you can keep tabs on what the kids are doing, so they can have fun doing that. But yeah, that's the idea. It's a sort of race to grade 1.
Fantastic.
Before we go on to Ross, John, can you just tell us a little bit about NMPAT and what it is and the wonderful premises you have there?
Yeah, NMPAT. It's a Performing Arts Trust. I think you lived right by it, didn't you? I remember you saying at one point, David.
I used to live right next door to it.
So you probably know more than I do.
We won't go down that road now.
It's a big, massive building in Northampton with big halls and tons of rooms. And a while ago, we became a trust because we were funded by the council, and luckily we gained the building. So I think we're the envy of many other music hubs. So I've been granted a tiny room, which I've built a studio in. But,
thank you, Ross. Can you tell us what life is like in Ealing?
Yeah, sure. So Ealing Music Service is based in West London. I was quite fortunate because there was a role for a music tech lead at the service, and I was working there. My kind of background is like John. I teach guitar, I teach drum kit, ukulele, whole class, etc. So I did A-level music technology again a long time ago, and that was, the opportunity to do something along those lines within the music service was just, music to my ears. I was brought in to do a specific task, which was we were giving all our staff an iPad, and the idea being that we were putting lots of different apps on those iPads for teachers to use in small group, one-on-one, and whole class lessons, just to support their teaching, enhance outcomes. And I've been training the staff up to use them and see how they can, implement that in their lessons. So that's what I was brought in to do, and that has been done. And we kind of had a little bit of partnership with Oxford Music Service with that. That's one of the services which were using iPads very early on. So, you know, I could talk about apps on iPads, and, you know, Tim from Rockschool there, they've just released the RSL learning platform, which is just really great. You know, if you're a teacher, you can sign up, register, and you can use, you know, all the resources on there. There's loads of great apps out there, and they're just getting better all the time. And supporting so many different elements of instrumental teaching, it just needs a whole, you know, kind of webinar on its own. But looking forward, you know, love to see what, you know, Bradley's managed to do. Excellent. I've taught some whole class with iPads and composition before, and I think that's the next step, really. Looking now, we've got the iPads, teachers are using them, they're more familiar with the technology. What can we now do taking music tech into schools? We do have lots of schools in Ealing taking part with VIP studios. So that's part of the Charanga offer. And it's just, I guess, about broadening the diversity of genres that technology offers, especially to some students who may not click with traditional routes, maybe into music via a music service. So if you can start talking to them about, you know, rap, hip hop, etc., it's just getting that kind of more inclusion there, and getting them on board. And it's just a great pathway in. So that's what the next couple of years are going to be looking like, you know, post Zoom lessons and everything else. Although I do think online lessons and the opportunity to have a group of students, maybe from different schools, delivering music tech online is also a great, you know, possibility. So Ealing, you know, pretty good at the moment, you know, room to do more.
Ross, it's really good to hear that. And I'm just wondering, where do you find out about the new apps? So new apps coming through all the time. Is there something you set up to find out what's coming through?
It's usually just flicking through, you know, music teacher magazine. They do little column there. So just various other resources, what people are talking about, you know, Google searches. Some apps are very good, some are not so good. There's a lot of crossover in the different apps. And it's using them really and finding out, you know, which apps do the best job, just keeping an eye on it.
Fantastic, thank you.
We're very conscious in TiME that lots of people in the hubs don't have the expertise that our guests have here. And we're wanting, and we are setting up support mechanisms to help people do that. So just write to us at TiME so that we can point you in the right way of help. Jess, you've been working as a music tech peripatetic. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that's been going around the schools?
Yeah, so just like John, I started teaching guitar, but my background is also music technology. That's what I did my degree in, and I'm doing further education at the moment. So it's filtered into quite a lot of different avenues with my teaching. John mentioned that a lot of our students come from taking a GCSE in music and not being able to play an instrument. So that's been one avenue that I've been able to help those children to achieve their GCSE in music through teaching them to access music through technology. I also do class teaching. So John and I have sort of structured a 10-week course around the RSL grades. So for grade 1, as John said, we try and get our kids up to grade 1 sort of as quickly as possible. So we've written a course around the RSL grade 1. So we deliver sort of 1 hour a week, obviously, to classes of 6, or some schools, if they have their own technology, bigger classes. So I teach up to 12 at a time. And using a combination of Charanga and Cubase, we're able to achieve that. So Charanga, Brad said earlier about having too many variables, which when I started my music tech journey, it was at college when I was 16. That's the thing I struggled most with. It was so overwhelming. There were so many plugins and just things that I was like, oh my God, where do I begin? And Charanga sort of slims it all down to just the things that you need. So it's got one reverb, one delay, and so you can get familiar with them. And then for our more capable children, they can move on to Cubase pretty soon after. So I've got one student at the moment he's completely like bowled me over with how enthusiastic he is and how capable he is. So we've been doing Cubase over Zoom, which has gone a little bit better than I anticipated, which is a relief. So there's that element. But yeah, and also it's helped me with inclusion. So I had one student who had chosen to do music. He had additional needs, and he was partly disabled. I'm not sure exactly his diagnosis, but he only had limited use of his arms. So I was able to incorporate, I brought him a control surface, and he was able to use the faders and the pots on the control surface to access the music technology, whereas he wouldn't have been able to play an instrument. And likewise, I've got a student who was a drummer. She was a grade 5 drummer, absolutely brilliant. And unfortunately, over the last year, for reasons that nobody's quite sure of, she developed Tourette's. And so she was starting to become a hazard to herself playing the drums and had to stop. But I've been teaching her to program drums on Cubase, and that's allowed her to take her music GCSE, doing what she's good at, just in a different way. So there's so many different ways that music technology has filtered into my teaching, from those who can't play an instrument at all, not musical, to those who exceed expectations. It's been really broad, actually.
That's so fantastic to hear, Jess. Absolutely brilliant. Those sort of case studies, you know, that people could share that knowledge, and oh yeah, I've got that lady. How do I get her into music? And what you've just been saying there, really, really good to hear. Yeah, we would want to share some more of those success stories, especially with accessibility issues.
Mm.
Dave?
Yes, we're all aware of budgetary considerations, but a big consideration as well are going to be qualifications for the future. And I know Rockschool in particular have been pioneering these. Tim, do you want to let us know what is happening in Rockschool, what's in the pipeline, and what is happening now that people may not be aware of?
Sure. Okay, I'll try my best. And so it's absolutely brilliant to be part of this forum today, because apart from my work at RSL Awards, before that I was an academic, and before that I was a songwriter. So I spent most of my life in recording studios, and occasionally making some money out of it as well, which was pretty good. And I found that it's always been a passion of mine. So one of the first things I did when I took my post was to have a look at our music production grades. And it struck me that there's just so little structure for music technology learning. And a common theme that everyone has said so far today is that I've had to come up with the structure to do this. And that's because we're comparing ourselves against musical learning, which has been around for thousands of years, and pedagogies which have evolved, and an established group of teachers. So actually what we need to do is to come up and build those communities now in order to promote good teaching and not being scared. Because I think that, you know, you can be a music technology teacher, but actually having the confidence to do what you want to do is something which we've been working hard to try and help teachers find. Because, you know, if you talk to music teachers about technology, the first thing they say is that, you know, that's worrying. Brad talked about, you know, minimal variables. Well, actually, that's because, you know, all of those knobs and buttons are pretty scary. They're no more complicated than the violin, though, really, once you get into it. So what we've tried to do is to come up with a structure of learning which people can engage with. So we've got the music production books and resources, and then grades that can accompany them. Because the other thing which I think we have to concern ourselves with music technology is that if you're a performer, there's an outcome. Okay, now whether that's something like a music grade, that's fine, or a performance. But actually, if you're working in a DAW and you're creating great music, what's your outcome? What do you do which demonstrates and shows the world that you're really good at doing that thing, that positive reinforcement that helps learners keep on going? So we find that the grades are a great way to do that. So we started off with music production grades, which look at utilising technology, also bits of theory around that as well. and just can be used as either as a textbook or as a an outcome as a grade. And we've just done the same thing with podcasting as well. So again, we've got the world's first podcasting grades. We've also done it with vlogging as well, but it's slightly less relevant to today's discussion as well. So embedding those things. And then the last thing that we've been really working hard on is trying to promote that idea of community. So we've come up with a program called Teach Today. And it struck me actually, thinking about what Ross, Jess and John have said, is that actually their backgrounds are working as instrumental teachers first, and then moving into music technology as an additional stream, an additional thing they do. So what we've done is break down how to teach music technology with some videos, some schemes of work, and then the books. And anyone that wants to can just go online and can get all of those resources, so they can just get started if they want to. And then, of course, the world's your oyster, right? You can go with however you like. But it's brilliant to be part of an effort which is building this community. Because the other thing that strikes me is that, everyone here is connected actually, through Richard and David and I have been talking a lot about TiME. I've met with Bradley before. Everyone's been talking about things like Charanga and VIP. Well, Max Wheeler helped me write the syllabuses in the first place, the guy who sorts out VIP Studio. It's such a small community that I think you can actually make quite a lot of progress quite quickly. Anyway,
Tim, could you say a bit about the teacher registry and the teacher support that you're offering now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just put a link into the chat here as well, because if anybody wants to just go and have a look at some of these things, then they're very welcome to. We make our basic premise is to try and make lots of free resources available to teachers, because we need to build a community. Actually, when you look at sort of musical learning, if you want to find a peripatetic teacher in Northampton, then I want to learn guitar Northampton, fine. Finding a music production or music technology teacher, that's a real challenge. So I think we've got to encourage people to kind of think about upskilling a little bit. And I think anyone that's taken that journey from being an instrumental tutor to also teaching some music technology, it's not as difficult as you think it's going to be. It's not actually that challenging to be able to engage with technology. Certainly at a sort of a more basic level.
I think one of the barriers that I know some music services and hubs have found is finding a teacher, and perhaps it's just not realising that they could look at the RSL website and find the music production teachers, break it down to that one teaching element, and see who's around.
So, and if anyone wants to have a look on the teacher registry there, then you'll be able to find local music technology teachers. We also go into universities quite a lot now to talk to new graduates, because when as a struggling musician just graduated from university, everyone's going to have to engage with education and teaching at some point. I mean, I'm sure we've all found that within our careers. So we just want to try and give people the sort of the tools in order to be able to start those teaching careers as well.
Do you get people coming to you asking for teacher support on music technology, direct to you with your VQ hat on?
Yeah, so we also do qualifications. So Rockschool's known for doing the graded exams, but we've also, as RSL Awards, we've also got these vocational qualifications, which are equivalent to GCSEs and A-levels and first and second years of degree. And we find it's exactly the same with those qualifications as well, though. We're really attracted, teachers at schools come to us and say, we're really attracted by the idea of doing innovative education, but we don't know how to staff it. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity available as well.
Great.
Two things I'd like to come in with here. Our sister organisation, James, is Joint Audio Media Education Services. And in higher education, we give industry accreditation, industry approval to university degree courses. One thing we're doing now is encouraging the students to look to the community to find people who want help with music technology. And we're working with Making Music, the organisation that represents all the leisure time music people. and trying to bring them together. That's because time is a big effort to make the sort of community that you were talking about, Tim. The other thing you mentioned there was that music technology itself inherently is not difficult. The problem is that since, well, I think music technology started when the first person banged a tree and made a sound.
David, you're all right. Just to jump in there, technology, techne means craft, actually.
Yes.
Actually, it comes from the word wood originally. So
Yeah.
techne and ology. So it's just the study of craft. That's what we're really talking about.
But certainly over the last 40, 50 years, as the technology has grown, the jargon has grown with it. And that is 90% of the problem, the language, the shorthand that is used, particularly that shorthand that we pretty much grew up with, a lot of us in recording studios. So one thing we are doing in TiME now is starting courses where we'll just break down the jargon, if you like, into understandable chunks, and that breaks the ice for people to get much more involved with the technology, and hopefully take away some of the fear level associated with it. Brad, do you want to come in on that and what you've experienced with the teachers?
I can. I was kind of burning to chip in on the discussion around community that Tim raised. I think it's the role and responsibility of music services to start thinking about, especially now. Someone put in the chat box, I think Zoom is going to be a big part of teaching after COVID. I absolutely agree with that. We have been forced to upskill our employees to get savvy with how to use Zoom and elements of technology that they didn't have to use beforehand. That's great. That's an opportunity. You've now got a cohort of staff who can all jump on and do teaching via Zoom. What are we going to do with that? So to create those communities with young people, how do we get access to those bedroom producers, those bedroom musicians, those kids that are toiling, doing excellent music in their room, but just can't network out, either with educational practitioners to take to the next step, or even with peers to collaborate? That's a barrier. But the whole this digital burst that we've all had is a chance to really build something. We've started looking at something in Leicestershire. We'll start it out small. Everything has to start small with technology. Start it as pilots, but we're going to look at getting young people doing online little masterclasses in music production, various things, scratching, online competitions where it's accessible. I'm just going to bridge into another thought I had as people were talking earlier. Where do we find the experienced tutors, like in music technology, to teach these young people? They are the young people. They are growing. They are in their rooms now, and they are those GCSE kids who are working hard in the rooms. They are the next cohort of teachers that you can access. So find the talent, find those kids who are doing GCSE music, or not even GCSE, it doesn't matter. Just find those kids who are about to leave school, about to leave college, who are toiling away as excellent music technologists, regardless of what door or what experience field they've got. They are going to be mega savvy and mega switched on with the techniques, the cutting edge genres, ready to teach those primary pupils, ready to teach those Key Stage 3 pupils. So that's where we've got to be looking, because inherently, as part of their culture, they've been teaching themselves and they've grown up with it. So that's where that next cohort of tutors is, I believe. I think it's on the doorstep, but we've just got to find a way to puncture into it and communicate and say, hello, young people, we're here and we want you to teach us and to teach other people. That's a big thing.
I think a lot of this. Yeah, no, I think a lot of this will come through in the next session, next Wednesday, when we start talking about careers and how do young students find career paths within this sort of business. I think you're spot on, and yeah, really interesting and great to hear. We've got a couple of questions coming in. I'd like to ask this first one, which was sent in by Graham Bland. Let me just read this out to you. So this is Graham Bland from Barking and Dagenham. My question for the panel is, how do you support progression in music technologies for children and young people who are in digital poverty or living in temporary accommodation? We have high numbers of these people in the London borough, Dagenham and Barking. This includes issues around the bandwidth and availability of equipment in the home setting to support individual practice. It's a pretty big question there, but Brad, do you want to have a stab at that to start off with?
Okay, I mean, that's a massive barrier for music technology. We like to assume most households have access to the internet, and most households have access to a computer, a laptop, a phone of some description, and that is the gateway in. Of course, the vast majority do have that, and some do not. It's a very tough question. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've got the absolute answer for it. If this was an absolute criteria and you had a real drive in your music hub service to offer something to those people without internet and those devices at home, I would say if managers are asking you to do that, then they need to put some money up to make it work. Self-contained devices. There's an excellent there's a range of these devices made by Teenage Engineering called a Pocket Operator. Some of you have probably come across them. It's the same company who make the OP1, which is a very desirable bit of kit. But these
there we go, Jess.
Thank you, Jess. I was going to get mine out. Yeah. So those little devices, size of a calculator, they're effectively a step sequencer. They've got they're powerful things. They've got effects built into them. You can sequence drums. Some of them are samplers with built-in microphones. You can daisy chain them so that they can all become BPM synced. Some of them are themed. There was a Rick and Morty one. Okay, that might not mean a lot to some people here, but to young people, that means a lot because they watch Rick and Morty on TV. A lot of it, I do, my wife, we love it. They are fun, accessible devices. They start out at about £50 a piece. I was on the cut. I've got a quote in at the moment to get a class set for samplers to try and do a bridge on from the turntablism, so you can do beat making via sampling, i.e. old school hip hop, and then do scratching over the top. So I'd say if your managers are saying, how do we access these young people without technology in their homes? Well, that's on you, managers, to put a pot of funding together, because there's you can't do music technology by clapping your hands. We need a device. So that could be one option. But
that's great. On the hardware front, let's think about bandwidth. Ross, there in Ealing, any issues with bandwidth and online programs, that type of issue?
I guess in Ealing, obviously, just from what Brad has mentioned, you do expect, you do need, if people are using the VIP studio, for example, then, you're going to need internet connection and a computer device. I mean, I'd be interested, just going back to that, previous question, governments have started to identify digital poverty across the country with online learning at the moment. So, that's been brought up the agenda, and I think people are more aware than ever now. I think some people might actually be surprised that some people don't even have one laptop in their household, but it's the case for many children, especially in deprived areas in London and across the country. So I think, if we're accessing those type of children and trying to give them opportunities, what are happening to these laptops? They've been given to a lot of these children. Is that now a step for us to go forward and make a case, for that? Hopefully they're going to stay with those families. I can't imagine why they'd take them back. What would they do with them? So I think once if we can identify those families through the schools, and then maybe start trying to offer, very specifically music tech or the offer of a music tech kind of course to these children, then that's probably a step in the right direction there.
So it's just the issue on the bandwidth. If you've got internet access and fighting over that accessing within the household, John, have you got any examples or any words of help there within your area, Northamptonshire?
Only, not really with bandwidth. I mean, with bandwidth, I would say from a software point of view to look at Soundtrap because it works on mobiles. So that's just presuming kids have got smartphones, but I would have thought they're more likely to have smartphones than they are a good laptop. But you can always go to, well, you can't really, but there's public places you can go to and possibly tether onto internet. I don't really know how safe that is to recommend to kids. There are always ways around it with bit of creative thinking. But yeah, on Saturdays, like we teach classes of 30, and Soundtrap has been a lot easier to use than Churanga. As when when we're opening up to anyone can sign up. Churanga's good for when you're in the classroom, but as a next extracurricular activity, we've found that Soundtrap's been a good one to look at.
Yeah. Have you looked at BandLab as well, or
BandLab was a bit dodgy on the old safeguarding.
Oh, is it? About Foundation.
Soundation, I think Churanga uses Foundation as the front end essentially. That's just Churanga's good for in classes because you can keep a list of all the kids and everything. But the last time I looked at BandLab, a few of us did. There was sort of links to social media, and it just didn't seem like a good option at the time. The Churanga falls down, if I'm being completely honest, in that from the door itself isn't amazing. I think Soundtrap's arguably the best. I don't know if anyone else would agree with me as far as the cloud-based doors are at the moment. But I mean, you can't obviously beat offline stuff. But yeah, that's where we're at the moment. We use a bit of everything, really.
I think those programs are really good entry-level programs, and I think at some point you need to move on to something like Ableton, Pro Tools, obviously Cubase. I'm going to say that, aren't I? Logic, the GarageBand, those sorts of programs. But it's what advanced features that you might need, I suppose, going from those sorts of entry-level programs up the ladder. Tim, are you working with those programs as well within your exams and VQs?
Yeah, one of the things that I think one of the mistakes we made actually when we first launched in 2016 the music production syllabus was to insist that in order to be able to access that work that you had to use a specific DAW. So when we revised in 2018, my key focus was to actually make sure that we say DAW agnostic, and people say DAW a lot. In case anybody in the chat doesn't know what a DAW is, it's a digital audio workstation. It's a computer program, and the heartbeat of what we do. I think there's a couple of things about because digital poverty is such a big question to answer. We as a society, we're in exactly the right time at the moment to be answering that question. By the way, looking over the last year about how important our digital environment has been, and how the pandemic has meant basically 50% of the population have really suffered, 50% of the population have actually been fine. But one of the great things about music technology is that when you do it, teaching of music technology is just as effective in a group, in a classroom situation. It's a lot easier than teaching drums. And in terms of being able to access a large number of people and make a bigger impact to a group of people. So I would suggest that actually, that the availability of that digital stuff is absolutely really important. But setting up a classroom full of kids to work together, to share their music together, and to enjoy sort of collaborating and making new music is a great opportunity. And I just also want to showcase that there are loads of really cool bits of technology that aren't computers as well. And this is still music technology. This is my stylophone, which is also a monophonic synth.
We've bought a class set of those.
This is my Tascam recorder, which is a 4-track. I mean, when I started in recording studios, I was actually using 8-track recorders, and this is a 4-track recorder, and it fits in my hand, and it's a couple of pounds. or a Raspberry Pi where I can make things happen, or this, which is my favorite thing ever, which turns this makey which turns anything into a control, into a keyboard. You know. So I think also, you know, we need to think wider than just the computer. The computer is really important. The DAW is really important, but actually getting your hands on a synthesizer or a turntable, or plugging a microphone into a 4-track recorder or anything like that, it's all really, really valuable.
Brilliant. John, you've got your hand up there. Can't hear you. Mute.
Oh, rookie error. We found, I was just going to agree totally. We found when we were making our 10-week lesson, we realised that we just ended up having the kids sat in front of a laptop right, every lesson for an hour, and it was pretty lame. I mean, they were getting on with it and being quiet, but then once we cracked out a mixing desk and different microphones and effects and the actual physicality of making music, you know, like you would old school style in a way, you have to put a few of those lessons in, because otherwise it just end up being beats in your bedroom, which is what everyone sort of seems to think it is. So it is important, like you say, to get some hardware stuff out, and it is cool that there's some cheaper stuff now. So yeah, I just wanted to agree that it's important to try and come up with some lessons that do deviate.
Tim, you're going to say?
I couldn't agree more, John, by the way, just to sort of echo your agreement, but just to also reiterate that music technology is a listening skill as well as a practical skill also, and that, you know, there's really rich stuff that you can do just by listening to great music and trying to understand and take apart the techniques that people have used.
And another area that we all need to explore really is using music technology, music itself, and sound as a means of teaching STEM subjects, particularly as the rug is being pulled out of the arts an awful lot. And I had an experience some time ago where kids went into a physics class and asked the teacher started teaching the physics, and they said, well, we've done that. We did all that in music. So, which is a wonderful thing. Somebody, Emmy has asked about music technology training for therapists. And that is very much the subject of our third webinar. And we have lots of people from the Drake Foundation are coming in, and Chiltern Music Therapy, who are using music technology. But we'll be setting up these very basic courses again for people like therapists, and particularly as well for those people working with students or older people who have very profound learning difficulties. And there are, as Tim is showing there are lots and lots of pioneering devices that people are working with. And in time, we want to make people aware of all of this stuff that's available. I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit here. In terms of music services hubs, do any of you see using music technology and teaching music technology as an additional revenue stream to help with the funding of the hub?
Yeah, in our case, so when COVID hit, we lost our Saturday centres, which were the sort of a huge part of what we do, because they were devised to filter in young kids into our county groups. And then obviously when you get a kid into a county group, they're paying up until they're 18 and what have you. So obviously we had to go virtual, and for all the different classes, woodwind and what have you. And the music production class by far is the most popular one. So finally there was that sort of evidence that you can make money, and that's what kids want to do. So in our case, it can definitely be monetized. So yeah.
And we need you to talk to all the other music hubs in the country.
I'm happy to do it. I'm not the best speaker, but I'll give it a go.
Jess, anything from you on these sorts of things that we've been covering, and the sort of hardware that you use alongside the software. Also interested in your route into the work. Well, we had a question there from Jack Locke. Do you think there is an issue music and tech students face when entering the business side of the industry? We're covering a lot of that in next Wednesday's session, but any words of wisdom from yourself on how you got employment with NMPAT?
Sure, yeah. So do you want me to start with the hardware?
Yeah, go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, so my career before teaching, or as well as teaching, was predominantly live sound engineering. So as well as doing live sound in bigger venues and stuff like that, and at festivals, I also perform as a musician, so I have a small rig myself. So as John said, I personally think that when you're staring at a computer screen all the time, you don't really have a context for the things that you're using. So if when you're setting the gain levels or whatever, I think it's nice to have a hands-on experience of what it is you're physically doing and where the software has been contextualized from. So I took in my PA. I've just got a column Bose system, and I took in my Soundcraft mixing desk, and a couple of mics, and we did a whole session which was just me demonstrating how to set up a PA and how to get sound out of it, and then the students would pair up, but I had one student would be the hands and one student would be the mouth, so they had to use the correct terminology at every step of the way in a very pedantic way. So the male end of the XLR goes into the input, etc. And the other student wasn't allowed to sort of communicate. They just had to receive the information and then do it. So it's sort of exercise, and then they'd swap. So exercised using the terminology and physically understanding what that was and how it actually was applied.
Fantastic, love it.
So that was a massive learning curve for them, and then obviously it made a bit more sense when we did the software based stuff. But yeah, what did you ask after? Sorry.
Yeah, and sort of getting a job in the business, as it were. So you've come through university and then looking for work.
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none sort of career person, in that I went to university, did music technology, but I'm a performer, a live sound engineer. I mix and produce music, and I teach, so a little bit of everything. And John was actually, not to make him feel super old or anything, but John was actually my guitar teacher at secondary school.
Oh, he is definitely super old.
he's gonna send me angry texts after. No, so John, after I, finished at school or whatever and went to uni, I have social media pages for my own endeavours, and John sort of caught onto one of those, followed them, we got in touch, and he said, how about coming to teach music tech at NMPAT? So in that regard, I was quite lucky, really, in the sense that I already had a connection. However, I think it's really important to emphasize to students that you should really take as many opportunities as you can. So if you get offered a project, even if you feel like it might be a bit out of your depth, or even if you think it's way below your capabilities, like even to this day now, I still get involved in as many different projects as I can, because you just don't know who you're going to meet, what opportunities are going to open, and also what you have to offer as well. So like John and I have quite different backgrounds in our teaching, but together I think we have a lot to offer.
Well, that's really good. And I find it interesting that that's come from the sort of the guitar side of things with John. Ross, I see a guitar in your background there on your shot. Is it guitarists that then become the music technology teachers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess being, I play drums as well, and drums learnt on an acoustic instrument, and slowly over the years, drum pads started coming out, drum machines, and there's this lovely feedback loop with people who play physical drums and people who program drums on technology, and they influence each other. Suddenly someone's doing a drum and bass beat, which a drummer would probably never naturally play because it's very fast and quite complex. But then you do learn to play it, and they start influencing each other. And then even the sounds, for music production, for me, the most interesting part was the way the sounds of the drums change between different genres. I've always loved the idea of sound You know, you can have, there's a standard beat maybe across a lot of dance music, but it's the way that the beat sounds, you know, that's the important thing, and that's always got me. So I started to put triggers onto the drums. So you'd hit a drum, and that would act as a MIDI signal to a sampler, and you could then release, you know, an additional sound on top of the drum you're playing. And I'd be doing that live in the bands that I played with. And then we could start triggering samples and playing along to samples, etc. So that's really how I started introducing technology with an acoustic instrument, marrying it up with the kind of the electronic side, and then having the fusion of the two. And I could be in a situation where I would be changing snare sounds for verses and choruses or breakdown sections. And it, you know, and also obviously samples coming through a PA system in a live sound setting, it just sounds huge, you know, and drums can sound really terrible in a live setting unless you've got a great engineer there and a great kit and it's all tuned, etc. So I'd get on stage and sound bigger than any other band on the night. So that was one of the kind of draws for me. I love the idea, Jess, talking about training school children up with live sound, because if you can make the argument to the head of music or the head, look, we'll train these children up, and then you've got someone who can do the sound at your speech night, at your, you know, your end of year shows, music nights. You know, there is often, you find there's equipment in schools not being used because no one knows how they use them. Maybe a previous head of music bought this stuff and it's just lying there, it's covered up in curtains or something. Let's get the kids using this equipment and to better the school, give them some responsibility.
It is a prize. It's horrible, isn't it, when you see all this kit not being used? It's I've seen kit locked away and not to be touched, and it's horrendous that stuff's there and all that money that's been wasted if it's not being used. Just a bit of training. Yeah, difficult. Dave?
Thank you, Ross, for that. Tim mentioned that you know, our young people are going to be the music entrepreneurs, the innovators in the future. Nearly everybody is, in spite of the inland revenue, nearly everybody is going in the creative industries is going to be a freelance, and it's really, really important that people are given basic business and communication skills as a part of the work that we do. And it isn't hard. People think that basic business stuff, bookkeeping, working out your VAT has to be really boring stuff. It isn't. It can be very exciting and it can be very creative. So that's another area that we are looking into. I'm conscious that we're coming to the end very soon of this webinar. I'd just like to have a quick roundup of anything that anyone else would like to throw in the pot here before we finish. And Richard, are there any other more questions in the chat?
Most of those questions have been answered. So I think let's, Jess, anything you'd like to throw in? Any other thoughts, words of wisdom?
The only thing that's on my mind that I didn't say earlier was somebody asked about deprived areas.
Yeah.
I grew up in a deprived area myself, and I came from a background of, you know, not as much money as other people sort of thing. I think it's quite a simple solution. I don't know how effective it is for everybody, but I think having a lunchtime provision is a really simple but effective way that schools can help. If you've got just a room or a space within the school that somebody can go and have access to the equipment that they need.
So a music tech club type of idea.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Or even if it's trustworthy students, even if it's just one for secondary, for example, I was trusted at school. I could just use the music department whenever I pleased, unattended. Like, even if you had a facility, just a space that a student could go and just lose themselves in for an hour, putting their skills to practice on their own terms sort of thing. I think that's really important. And it doesn't take much to set up a couple of stations and a small practice room, and it could make a massive difference to a couple of students.
Spot on. I totally agree with you. I've seen this in action, and also it brings in the peer-to-peer tuition. So that's nice. You've got that mix of year groups on the peer-to-peer. And again,
Absolutely.
back to accessibility. You know, that those people that aren't necessarily out wanting to play football or something, they're happy to be creating music, making, you know, sharing the joy of music making with the peer groups within a sort of music tech club environment. And the nice thing you could tag onto that is perhaps the Rockschool graded exams in music production. What are you doing in a music tech club? Well, you could be working towards that sort of system alongside that. But I think that's absolutely brilliant, Jess. Thanks for that. Ross, anything with you?
I guess, you know, I know you're talking a bit more about, you know, progression routes, etc. But reach out to your local colleges. You know, reach out to your local universities. You know, get to know the course leaders. Who is coming through? You know, can we look at graduate programs for people coming out of these music tech courses? Because I think, as Jess mentions as well, I think, you know, everyone seems to be doing quite a lot of different, slightly different aspects of you know, their career, whatever that might be. You know, there's some teaching, there's some performance. So everyone needs to kind of have a diverse kind of working life opportunities there. And I think definitely music hubs can play their part in taking the best talent, training them up and getting them into schools, and so they're passionate.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the mixed portfolio musician, isn't it? You know, it's not just playing the instrument, it's all those other bits that will help pay the mortgage at the end of the day, or the rent or whatever. So great. John, anything with you?
Well, I don't know what's helped Northamptonshire and is sort of getting in touch with as many people as I can. So finding out what the college courses are doing and trying to get, say, some kids from there to come over and tech a live show that we might put on. So I think networking with all the other hubs could save yourself a hell of a lot of time. You know, you could slog, you know, having tons of meetings trying to work out what should we buy, what should we deliver, when someone knows what the answer is already and can just save you all this time.
Duplication, the root of all evil.
yeah. So I think, especially, like, that's what's so good about this, isn't it? You know, we can help each other out. So yeah, that's what I've got to add. Really,
absolutely. What part of the reasoning for TiME. Tim, we have a question there on from someone asking about qualifications, getting qualifications in music technology. I'd like to get a qualification in music tech. Could you recommend a pathway for me?
Well, I guess that depends really on, are we talking about a qualification for a teacher or for teaching qualifications? So our grades are set up for, you know, to give a structure to learning for beginners. You could look at a professional teaching qualification. So we do one where you can get your teaching qualification through the use of music technology as well. At RSL, we're not a teaching organisation though, but there are a few places out there. So if you want to drop me a note afterwards, I can help out with some ideas for that as well.
Will do. And any other sort of closing thoughts on music hubs and technology?
Yeah, and I think you know, technology is thought of as being expensive and complicated. And if people who have joined today have heard anything, it's neither of those things. Actually, when you really break it down. So just from our conversation today, I think I posted a link where you can get the free books, so you can use the free books and some ideas on how to teach and build your scheme of work. We've talked about 4 or 5 different free digital audio workstation softwares that you can get. So actually, the majority of schools and community environment centres, you know, have access to computers, basic computers. They can be used in order to start off on this journey. So I just think that actually it's then about having the confidence to just start and give it a go, really.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, that's 6 o'clock. Dave, over to you.
Yes, and thank you very, very much to this wonderful panel. I think most people can realise that we could go on talking for hours and hours, and we probably will. We'll have many more sessions like this with other people joining in. Next week's webinar is the first part is to do with what is happening in the industry as far as music education is concerned. We'll be joined by Ollie Morris from UK Music, who will be doing a presentation. And then the second part is very much to do with music in the community, and particularly working as well with disadvantaged students. So, and Kate has a wonderful presentation to do on that. So we will look forward to seeing everybody there. We're going to finish now. Please take the time to just click on the link to our webinar. Sorry, not our webinar, to our questionnaire, and that will really help us for the future. Get in touch with us at TiME. On the TiME site, you can sign up for our newsletter. That will really be wonderful as well. So thank you once again to everybody, and look forward to speaking to you all again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.